Thank you so much for being here tonight, all of you in the audience, and thank you to Botond, Bálint and Virág as well for all the organizing of the event and putting it all together for us. In fact, we were also quite relieved that we didn't have to make the April date, because we actually launched the book a week before that with Tony, Adam, George was there, and many others in Budapest just the week before. So we had a bit of a breathing space to prepare for tonight's event, actually. So what we are going to do is, I'm not going to repeat anything Botan said, but I'm just going to quickly run through the schedule. So the plan is very quickly today is to introduce the book with samples of readings from the actual texts. But the text is varied. It's a really complex project. We have the actual translations in the book, but we've also got lots of essays, literary historian sort of focused writings, personal texts, but also creative responses by various writers at the very end. So we'll be giving you sort of samples of all the various different types of text rather than just the literary translations themselves. I'm going to also talk through briefly now the concept of the book, the structure of the book. Once I've finished, we'll give you a quite, well, you will have to sort of shut us up when you think it's going too far, but we'd really like to give you a substantial sort of reading of the translations. Several of them we will give you in bilingual, in both languages, particularly for those who do not know the original text itself. Once that's over, Adam will give you a quick sample or a quick reflection, critical reflection on his part as co-translator and how sort of he battled through the translation process himself, working with a difficult person who I am, and a difficult text Attila József wrote or produced. And once we finished, we've got this special sort of section where we've asked George to present his own contribution in the book, which is a personal essay, a personal account of George's encounter with the József over, but also how it sort of shaped and influenced his own work. I don't know. I'll leave George to sort of explain that. Once that's finished, we'll have a little chat together, and once that's finished, we're going to finish up with again a shorter reading from the book. The book itself kicks off with my introductory editorial introduction. So what I'll do now is I'm going to sort of give you little snippets from it. Sometimes I'll just sum it up because it might be quicker. Attila József's poetry is surrealist, quasi-anarchist, existentialist, Vionesque, tough-minded, deeply drenched in Hungarian folklore and folk songs, passionate, lyrical, elegiac, marked by his solitary wandering, his keen observation of the lives of the people, by his psychoanalytically inflected gaze into the unconscious, into the mind and body of lovers, his philosophical focus on dialect and social injustice. The lyrics, free verse and formal in an astonishing number of experimental forms, range from the metaphysical to the memoir, affiliations to French medieval, post-symbolist and surrealist poetry, fuse Nietzsche, Marx, Hegel and Freud in daring raids on the inarticulate, sing with haunting vernacular and ancient beauty and rise to extraordinary heights and flights of the imagination, yet are always grounded in the real, in the concrete particulars of the metropolis, the dark streets of the underclasses of this world. So the book, which is massively and intensely collaborative, is born from several research trips to Budapest, and is the result of a unique partnership between, the way it started, Adam and myself, long-term friends, colleagues, also fellow writers, where weird creative minds are intertwined in a way that makes, particularly during this project, inseparable. Perhaps the most fruitful collaboration occurs, and here I'm referring to the methodology of our working together, which wasn't simple at all. But perhaps the most fruitful collaboration occurs when a sculptor meets an anatomist on the surgical slab. One's vibrant, reconstructive architectural sculpting could only emerge after the other's precise anatomical dissection of the poems through a rigorous textual autopsy. And also vice versa, the poems stripped bare to their essence through neurosurgical obsession and contextual analysis were then reconstructed in a new language, into a new linguistic milieu, and into, therefore, a completely new life. The poems themselves have been the actual, what we were to translate, have been selected and organized, or were selected and organized in some sort of vague chronological order, yet presented within the time capsules in a looser structure, allowing the reader to navigate themselves and to create their own emerging themes, motives, narratives. They also come in twos, the new text in English accompanied, echoed, shadowed by its own ghost. Here the selection is the real fusion started from József's early period of modernist free verse via his surrealist period of poésie pure and Hungarian folk songs, arriving at his mature psychoanalytic and philosophical elegies, political verse, and his final period of his heartbreaking flora and farewell poems. This selection of the poems has been a conscious one. We have also included texts, and this is where the research, which lasted 5 years in the end, have included alongside the major and more well-known texts or poems, actual fragments, and even texts which have not been sort of published before. What's interesting here, I don't know how meticulous you want me to be, but finding the right version of the original was a huge task, because even though I did an MA in English, Hungarian literature back in the 1990s, that was a long time ago, and I forgot when we started working on it that there is about 20 different sort of critical additions to the original. So by the time we finished almost halfway through, I realized that we are not translating the right critical edition, Tony. I just didn't tell you that. So we had to go back and rework. I don't know if you understand the nuances of the stress here and the frustration, but this took us then another extra good few months to sort of go back and revisit texts we've already translated based on the right, what I decided to be the right critical edition, which is, if you know the Attila József literature in Hungarian, it is the Béla Stoll critical edition from 2005. The collaboration expanded in other ways. The collaborative work on this book significantly expanded beyond the original scope, which was going to be simply 60 poems, and that was that originally. But instead of simply involving the two translators and the translations, it became a since ongoing, actually, dialogue with various institutions, various dramatic turns and U-turns, with various literary houses, such as, for example, particularly with Petőfi Literary Museum in Budapest. I met then scholars, museologists, such as Aranka Kemény, and György Tverdota. Aranka Kemény is a senior museologist and literary historian at the Petőfi Literary Museum in Budapest. György Tverdota, who actually taught me in the 1990s, a leading scholar of Attila József and president of the Attila József Society. So these psychogeographical trips to the museum, as well as other museums, for example, one of the childhood homes of Attila József at Gát Street, as well as the kind of tragic house, which is now a beautiful museum in Balatonszárszó, where the poet dies, enriched the research. The collaborative research and archival work not only deepened the project, but also profoundly and rather dramatically influenced the book's design. This is going to be very important for me to talk about here as briefly as possible. Therefore, this collection of poems in translation aims to recreate the Song of the Cosmos, a Cosmos éneke, which was or is an unpublished sequence of sonnets that József intended to publish in the 1920s. We have selected the title, or chosen the title of József's unpublished 1920s collection for this book, as it aptly captures his original vision, but also the book's kind of overarching vision. What does the Song of the Cosmos refer to? Who sings to whom and about what? The original concept of the sonnet sequence, the Song of the Cosmos, may have been to explore the powerful scope of human consciousness and its connection to a larger universal dimension. Cosmos here isn't the physical universe, but rather the soul expanded to cosmic proportions, a universe imbued with a political subject. In the sonnet cycle, József thus wanted to sing the song of this cosmic soul as a lyrical outpouring of the cosmos and as a song of the human species, channeling cosmic forces and singing as global collective, as global consciousness, a planetary cosmos speaking about and for itself. For József, a poem is an amplified cosmos with an intricate network of historically politicized algorithms and disharmonies, where human planetary beings seek connection, meaning, understanding, empathy, and solidarity. The subject, the solitary self, doesn't merely reside within this universe. They actively inhabit it and seek to establish a hope that harmony between the individual and society can and will be established. This dwelling of this perpetual anarchist, this universal political doer, prophetic nonconformist, wanderer, visionary flaneur, is not a passive or an indifferent modus vivendi, but a radical and revolutionary existential creative modus operandi, and vice versa, an activist creative dwelling being in the world, deeply engaged with its own historical and social vulnerabilities, capable of reinforcing dialogue superior to authority for a fairer future. Importantly, this poetic engagement, where doing and being can coexist in the realm of writing, transcends introspection, actively seeking interconnections and dialogue with the other. This collection aims to resurrect the Song of the Cosmos, therefore, presenting it as a distinct book within the book. Therefore, our aim was twofold: to revive the previously abundant sonnet sequence within the book, while also creating a new collection encompassing not only the sonnets, but poems carefully selected from the entirety of József's oeuvre. The original graphic illustrations, it's really, I really hope you can follow me, because this is where it became interesting. This is where the whole research had that U-turn for me specifically, when I encountered the actual original illustrations from the 1920s by his friend, the poet's friend György Békefi, a young artist of the Hungarian avant-garde. So the actual encountering with his artwork was central to the book. He was a close friend to the poet. His artistic journey is short-lived, and the ending is rather tragic. Békafy left Hungary in the 1930s, and unfortunately, his life ended in Bergen-Belsen in 1944. His work right now is still largely dispersed, and his name almost lost. So what we wanted to do is the first time, and I don't think this even has happened in Hungary, in any Hungarian text yet, we wanted to reunite the original sonnets with the original graphic illustrations in the text. So I'm just going to show you this briefly. We've managed to have all the copyrights from Petőfi Literary Museum. Altogether, with the cover, Békafy produced 4 beautiful and rather disturbing, eerie, and yet, I don't know, fierce synergy within these graphic designs. I don't have time to go more into that, but he originally in the 1920s sort of designed 4 altogether, one focusing on 3 sonnets at the same time, I think. It was incredibly important, it is incredibly important to mention our own designer, Miklós Ferenc, who not only did he work on the actual putting the book together and the typesetting of the book together, but he sort of figured out how aesthetically to and design-wise, typographically create the 2 books within the books, because it's repeated once in Hungarian, once in English. But what he did alongside is the actual cover. So his job was, I just asked him, Miklós, please, here is the original Békafy cover design, and I'd like you to recreate our own design based on being inspired by the original. So this is what he came up with, and these are his words, which I'm sort of using in my introduction. The cover for the Song of the Cosmos dives into the concept of cosmic space. By reconfiguring Békafy's original graphics, Ferenc blends drawing with construction, deconstruction, highlighting the interplay of positive and negative spaces and dynamic curves. The densely intersecting lines aim to evoke a cosmic web with radiating arcs directly echoing the cosmos arcs from the original cover. Through strategic use of red and black crescendos, his new cover intends to create a palpable tension, resulting in a composition that is both chaotic and richly textured, while remaining true to constructivist design principles. So that's where the Miklós's work comes in. Very, very important within the book and within this project. And I'm going to conclude very shortly. This bilingual volume, which would not have been possible without the unwavering support and commitment to European poetry and poetics provided by our publisher, Tony Fraser. So we are hugely grateful for Tony for taking on this project, but also for being patient with us, because it did take us a lot longer than we planned. The additional little packages that we are offering here are also essays, personal and critical, along with my introductory text. There is a short essay by Adam. There is a beautiful essay offered by George, but there's also 2 quite meticulously written and long critical texts, one by Professor György Tverdota, introducing the life and work of Attila József, particularly to those who come to his work as outsiders. And there is again a very detailed critical piece on the narrative between Békafy and Attila József and their friendship, and about the original sonnet sequence. At the very end of the book, there is what I just call, because I'm a creative writing teacher, the creative section, even though I hope that the whole project is creative enough. We call it variations. In this, there are so-called ekphrastic texts, or in simple term, responses by way of poems, some written by George, a poem by Adam, a poem by István Vörös, contemporary Hungarian poet living in Hungary, and a rather elongated prose poem by me at the very, very end. So this is the book in a nutshell. And now I'm just going to ask Adam to come up and read with me.
You start?
Yeah. Tiszta szívvel. Nincsen apám, se anyám, se Istenem, se hazám, se bölcsöm, se szemfedőm, se csókom, se szeretőm. Harmadnapja nem eszek, se sokat, se keveset. 20 esztendőm, hatalom, 20 esztendőm, eladom. Hogyha nem kell senkinek, hát az ördög veszi meg, tiszta szívvel betörök, ha kell, embert is ölök. Elfognak és felkötnek, áldott földdel elfödnek, s halált hozó fűterem, gyönyörű szép szívemen.
With a pure heart. Mother and father have I none. I have no God, no country's mine, no crib, no shroud to keep me warm. I hold no lover in my arms. I've eaten nothing for 3 whole days, just slices of nothing for hungry eyes. All the strength of my 20 years, well, they're up for sale. Here, they're yours. If no damned soul wants to buy them, well, the devil will pay me, so he will. With a pure, good heart, I'll thieve and steal, aye, and murder a man, and go to hell. They'll catch me, hang me till I'm dead, cover me under the earth and sod, and on my dead and pretty little heart, yellow grass will grow in fits and starts.
The human being spoke. And there was this human being, walked and stopped, looked at the world and spoke. I'm a pear tree. The pear tree's roots became the earth. The pear tree's trunk the mountains high. The pear tree's leaves the very sky. And lo, the insects and the birds and the hungry stars all fed on pears. Then moved on, walked and stopped, looked at the world and spoke. I'm coal and I'm iron, and in the clanking smithies hurled great steel mountains into fire, challenging death, new times to come, dizzying sleek, swift express trains, whoosh, crash bang, we win the race. Thus spoke the human being, spoke and stopped, and then was gone. All that was left unsaid, I'm a human. Mm-hmm. Was it one by one? A 7. E világon, ha ütsz tanyát, 7-szer szüljön meg az anyád, egyszer szüljön égő házban, egyszer jeges áradásban, egyszer bolondok házában, egyszer hajló szép búzában, egyszer kongó kolostolban, egyszer disznók közt az ólban, Fölsír a had, de mire mégy, a hetedik te magad légy.
If you set foot on Mother Earth, 7 times may she give you birth. But here, bear you once in a burning house, once in a flood of freezing ice. Bear you in a bedlam for the mad, once a sway in a soft wheat field, once in cloisters echoing, once in a pigsty richly stinking. That makes 6. But what can you do? The 7th is up to you.
Ellenség, ha elődbe áll, 7 legyen, kit előtalál, egy ki kezdi szabad napját, egy ki végzi szolgálatját, egy ki népet ingyen oktat, egy kit úszni vízbe dobtak, egy ki magva erdőségnek, egy kit ősebb bőgve védett, csellel, gáncsal mind nem elég, a hetedik te magad légy.
If your enemies are on your case, 7 of them should give you chase. 1 who starts his day off work, 1 who's finished all of his tasks, 1 who freely teaches the nation, 1 thrown into water so he'll learn, 1 who is the forest's seed, 1 guarded by the mighty dead. Fraud and corruption alone won't do. The 7th is up to you.
Szerető után, ha járnál, 7 legyen, ki lány után jár, egy ki szíved ad szaváért, egy ki megfizet magáért, egy ki a merengőt adja, egy ki a szoknyát kutatja, egy ki tudja, hol a kapocs, egy ki kendőcskére tapos, dongják körül, mint húst a légy, a hetedik te magad légy.
Were you looking for a lover? Well, 7 youths should seek the girl, 1 giving his heart for her single word, 1 paying the very price he feared, 1 playing at being her dream admirer, 1 who gropes her skirt to get her, 1 who seeks her to unbutton, 1 who trips on her wrap of cotton. 6 flies, they fall on the meat like dew. The 7th is up to you.
Ha költenél, s van rá költség, azt a verset 7 költség. Egy ki márványból rak falut, egy ki mikor szülték alut, egy ki eget mér és bólint, egy kit a szó nevén szólít, egy ki a lelkét üti nyélbe, egy ki patkányt bonzol élve, 2 vitéz és tudós 4. A hetedik te magad légy.
If you pour out lines and can afford the fees, 7 youths should compose the lays, 1 building villages from marble stone, 1 who was sleeping when he was born, 1 who measures the sky and nods, 1 who names with his name the word, 1 who works his soul beyond the grave, 1 who dissects wild rats alive. 4 are scholars, dandies 2. The 7th is up to you.
S ha mindez volt, ahogy írva, 7 emberként szállj a sírba. Egy ki teljes keberingat, egy ki kemény mellután kap, egy ki elvet üres edényt, egy ki győzni segít szegényt, egy ki dolgozik bomolva, egy, aki csak néz a holdra, világ sírköve alatt mégy. A hetedik te magad légy.
If all this happened as it was written, lie ye down in the grave, ye 7. 1 who's cradled on a milky breast, 1 that bites the nipple hard and fast, 1 who refuses the empty bowl, 1 who saves poor people's souls, 1 who works till he goes crazy, 1 who gazes at the moon so lazy. In the tomb of the world, the 6 they stew. The 7th is up to you.
You want to just read it? Read both. Yeah, both.
Okay. When the moon shines. When the moon shines, its quiet grave light on my bed. Dark rooms open up in my strange dreams. He slips down to the kitchen on the slabs, cuts bread, a scared child with his hungry mouth crammed. Only draughts of cold air know the truth. The house sleeps. Big eyes staring while his poor knees shake. He is rummaging through pots of lard, milk and soup like a tiny mouse. Watch him scrabble and sneak. Hear him creaking his way round the creepy larder. Tiny finger strays to lips. Shh, quiet. He'd beg forgiveness, but silence goes much further. Blows its cruel horn. The noises ring out. This noise, this anguish, this destroying of all life never ends, just gets furiously worse. The child turns pale with fear and drops the butter knife and creeps back to his bed like a ghost. When I wake up, the sun is burning, ice melting, scattering at speed splinters of frost. Like the shop window tropical fruit displaying when longing smashes through with its fists. God of winter's asleep as sky dissolves away. Satan's tired of the hell he's made his own. So he pours his fat heat down here on earth all day. The bushes burst into flames of green. Morning light. When in the morning light, the landscape it comes, trembling, breath stirring, thistledown grace, and as it slumbers still, wells up the charm, as though the river depths were not flowing, as the surface of the water plays. Pull yourself together, you foolish little man, for I'd not suspected it either, that it's not into the dawn's bright ether this artfully made fake angel tempts you further. All that art, all the mascara, all those lashes, all those tricks, all those arrows, all that crushing cunning, now you understand why the swineherd curses when the dirty drove of pigs goes out in the morning. Oh, how you'd love to squeeze her. But don't you take her too much to heart, this fairy queen. What would you do if she artlessly devoured your heart like the golden piglet does the tender corn?
Dusk. This dusk so sharp, so clear, it's made for me, far off. See how the structure, warp and weft of bare black boughs, with grace upholds the gravity of empty air. As each and every subject torn from every object, they sink into themselves, perhaps they cease to be, who knows? My gut feeling might have the right answer, except that, like the dog that's bold at by its master, brooding over its feelings in the cold black yard, it's howling at strangers, yet still won't breathe a word. That's what God dog's like now. Can I do without him? The only certainty, the mistakes that we make. Lucky, I lean on iams. It's how kids learn to walk. Only reason I can't pretend to be that child is that I'd be too moody, bolshy, treacherous, like everyone who is human, at least that's what I think. Sly, mulish, and so how could I possibly know? Guy winks at me and says, "Hello, pretty boy." Another lazy ass. You dodging work again. Your eyes as big as your belly. Well, is that wrong? A third tosses a coin, says, "Hope you'll muddle through. I feel for you. I've been through hell as well, my friend." Another guy, he nicks my junk just 'cause he can. A shove here, pull there, groping, poking, punching, croaking. But none of them can see the hum there on my back, the one I carry like mad mother her fetus, which she'll give birth to, she thinks, sempiternal void. Shall we skip that and go for countries?
Yeah, okay.
How did we do this?
Consciousnesses. Every three.
Eszmélet. We're skipping a few. Overprepared. Eszmélet. Földtől eloldja az eget a hajnal, s tiszta lágyszavára a bogarak, a gyerekek kipörögnek a napvilágra, a levegőben semmi pára, a csilló könnyűség lebeg, az éjjel rászálltak a fákra, mint kis lepkék a levelek. Kék, piros, sárga összekent képeket láttam álmaimban, és úgy éreztem, ez a rend. Egy szálló porszem el nem hibbant, most homályként száll tagjaimban álmom, s a vasvilág a rend. Nappal hold kél bennem, s a kint van az éj, egy napsüt ide bent. Sovány vagyok, csak kenyeret eszem néha, léha locska lelkek közt ingyen keresek bizonyosabbat, mint a kocka. Nem dörgölőzik sült lapocka számhoz, szemhez kisgyerek, ügyeskedhet, nem fog a macska egyszerre kint, s bent egeret.
Consciousness. As dawn divides the land from sky, and its clear, soft call ringing out, all the insects and the children fly and into daylight whiz out straight. In dry and dewless air, see bright feathery lightness rising high. At night, like little moths in secret, leaves fall upon the trees and sigh. I saw all streaked blue, red and yellow, the images that shone in dreams. No speck of dust could I allow to ruin what I saw as gospel truth. The world's iron order in my sinews blooms like dark mist, swelling, swirling. The moon rises inside me every day, when night's outside, inside, sun's smouldering. I'm skinny. Only food's the bread I get free from time to time. I chase among these glib souls, chatty odd, something that's surer than dice. Afraid to say that in my case, no sweet roast leg of lamb or kid will soften my heart. Cats hunt mice, catch nothing, inside or outside.
Akár egy halomhasított fa hever egymáson a világ. Szorítja, nyomja, összefogja egyik dolog a másikát, és így mindenig determinált. Csak ami nincs, annak van bokra, csak ami lesz, az a virág, ami van, széthull darabokra. A teherpályaudvaron úgy lapultam a fatövéhez, mint egy darab csönd. Szürke gyomércámhoz, nyers, különös édes. Holtan lestem az őrt, mit érez, s a hallgatag vagónokon árnyát, mely ráugrott a fényes harmatos színre konokon. Ím itt a szenvedés belül, ám ott kívül a magyarázat, sebed a világ ég hevül, s te lelkedet érzed a lázat, rab vagy, amíg a szíved lázad. Úgy szabadulsz, ha kényedül, nem raksz magadnak olyan házat, melybe házi úr települ.
The world's like a stack of timber, logs on top of one another, each thing pressing on its neighbor, clings to them, holds them together, each shapes the other like brothers. Only bears fruit what's not yet there, only what will be will flower, what's here and now falls asunder. Here at the rail yard playing dead, wrapped myself low around a tree, strip of silence. Moss, wild and weird, touches my lips, tasting so sweetly. I watch the guard, still as can be. What's he feeling? Shadow cast cold over silent tracks on shiny, dew-drenched coal, all black, stiff, awkward. Inside within there's suffering, but cause and rationales out there. The world's a wound, boiling, charring, your soul an infection, a fever, prisoner still, heart beats at the door. You feel free only if you're proud to dream of a home that's all yours for you to live in, not landlord.
Az meglett ember, akinek szívében nincs se anyja, apja, ki tudja, hogy az életet halálra ráadásul kapja, s mint talált tárgyat visszaadja bármikor, ezért őrzi meg. Ki nem istene, és nem papja se magának, sem senkinek. Láttam a boldogságot én. Lágy volt, szőke és másfél mázsa. Az udvar szigorú gyöpén imbolygott göndör mosolygása, ledölt a puha langy tócsába, hunyorgott, röffent még felém. Ma is látom, mi tétovázva babrált pihéi közt a fény. Vasútnál lakom. Erre sok vonat jön-megy, és elnézem, hogy szállnak fényes ablakok, a lengedező szösz sötétben, így iramlanak örök éjben kivilágított nappalok, s én állok minden fülkefényben, én könyöklök, és hallgatok.
The man with no mother, no father, is the only true dweller here, and knows what life means, either fleeting bonus or something spare returned to lost property's care when it's time. Kept it safe from bother, who won't be priest or God no longer, no preaching to himself or others. I saw happiness herself one day. Soft and blonde, she weighed a ton. On severe grass in the yard, she staggered with curly smile, fell down in a random puddle of rain. She squints, burps, grunts. I can still see clearly today how the light played on her flosses and fluffs heart fluttery. I've lived a while near the railway. So many trains, each comes and goes. I watch bright windows sailing by in endless night like drifty fuzz. So through the long night fly bright days. In the light of each cabin am I, on carriage windowsills, my elbows lean. I stand and listen in quietly.
If you're happy with that.
How it hurts. Run in, then out, you dart from death, its eye of kite, like a scared little mouse to its hole. Hot with desire, you run to the woman over there, whose arms, breast, and lap will save your soul. Not only spur of soft kiss and longing for her attracts, basic need drives you to. That's why all those who find a woman need to squeeze her tight till her mouth turns white, just so. Double burden, having to love, gift that maddens, and lover who can't find the loved one, feeling homeless, so helpless, like an animal does, pissing in woods under the lonely moon. We've no other recourse than this, that knife blade, there. Dare stick it to mother's neck. Be brave. Yet once there was a woman understood these words, but she went and tossed aside your love. No home, no kin among the living then. Head spins, all my grief and pain is amplified, like the urchin rattling the rattle he holds in his hands. Lonely noise along the road. What's to be done, for or against? To her, I mean. Admitting the ugly truth's no shame. The world rejects, in any case, fools and idiots drunk on sunlight or scared of the dreams. Culture slinks down off me, like old clothes to the ground, worn once by those happy in passion. But by what rule does she get to watch me wrestle death, having to suffer all alone? Baby hurts too when the mother gives birth to you. Humbly does it, calms that double pain. But as for me, my songs bring in lucre and fee, and shame is my close companion. Oh, help me, please. You lads and urchins, your wide eyes, when she passes, should be popping out. Innocent dolts, squeal and bawl under those jackboots. Tell her how you cry, how much it hurts. Faithful mongrels tumble beneath those heavy wheels, then bark at her. Woof! Oh, how it hurts. Women who sigh, heavy with your child, miscarry, cry out to her, oh, how much it hurts. Shiny people fall and break your bones so brittle and murmur to her, oh, how it hurts. And men, you too, who for a woman claw and tear at each other, yell, oh, how it hurts. Horses and bulls who to bear the yoke have their balls cut off, all cry, oh, how much it hurts. Fish, quiet as mice who bite the hook under the ice, Gorp abiter, oh, how much it hurts. All living things in fits and starts of pain trembling, burn down house and garden, lands and courts, come to her bed while she sleeps, all you living dead, and yowl with me, oh, how much it hurts. And while she breathes, I'll make her hear what she denies, her worth, refusing her moody will, run in then out, and scorn the fugitive lout in the very last refuge of all.
Two more for now. Szól a szája szólítatlan. Very strange poem. Szól a szája szólítatlan, gondja kél a gondolatban, erőlködik ám az erkölcs, zsigereim zsugorgatja, ne bolondozza belemben, ne kopogja kebelemben, babos vesémet ne vest ki, ne lankazd a lábaimat, ne szakazd a száraimat, ne kanyarog a karomban, ráncom redőmbe ne rejtezz, ne lugosítsd savamat, ne szorongosd a szavamat. Ráncom, ne rángasd, redőmben ne rejtezz, ne torlaszd el a torkomat, ne lapulj meg a lepémen, ne kiáltozz a képemen, csügögjáim ne csikorgasd, fürtöm tövét ki ne forgasd, mintha égnék, láng jár végig, lábujjamról lobog égig, ne nyisd meg az oldalamat, kicsurran a forralt kőnek, vasból való váladéka.
Mutter utter chatterless. Mutter utter chatterless, thought it threatens thinkingness, ethics tries through thick and thin to squeeze my guts and what's within. Don't you bow wow my sweet bowels, nor knock my knackered heart that swells. Don't bid my kidneys dotty beans, don't let my legs go jelly belly. Don't saw my shins off willy-nilly, don't mar and scar and harm my arms. Winkle not into wrinkles, screams, don't alkalize all of my acids. Don't drown my wonder-working words. Rankle not my wrinkles old, hide ye not in their fleshy folds. Don't clog the hollow of my throat, and in my spleen nothing secrete. Stop gabbing in my gob and mug. Don't break my backbone like a thug. Don't tear my curls out by the roots. As though burning flames flare through me, from my toes up to the sky, the wound in my side please do not open. From the boiling stone bursts free the oozing of the molten iron.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a few remarks about the translation process from my point of view. Obviously, I can't speak Hungarian. I'm taking in the Hungarian through Agi's scripts and notes. So there was sort of given a very full, straight translation by Agi, in which, with a lot of information accompanying it about the metrics, about the sound of it, about the context, also informational, cultural information, a great deal of that. And we also, where there were recordings of the actual poems being read, whether it be on YouTube or on the internet, those accompanied as well. So I was just thinking that the other side of it, that's just thinking about the relationship of writing a poem anyway, and the process of translation in this way. Well, Robert Graves said that a poem gestates at the back of consciousness when it's gestating there. There's a sudden meeting, he said, in the poet's mind of certain incognizable, unrelated, and unpersonified forces, from which meeting comes a new creature, the still formless poem. So I think there are three things in what Graves says there. There's the poet's mind, these unpersonified forces, and then the formless poem. And that's Attila József many of the poems are actually about that process of composition. The Song of Cosmos describes the mind as a metropolis with a huge resonating voice, my brain a roaring city of machines, its voice resounding echo in great caves, deep organ boom, the warring thoughts. So the poem is being written, but as if by a collective, by a multitude, with a huge resonating voice. We write poems together. They hold my pen. So the poem emerges from the poet's mind, engaging with the cosmic forces that seem to come from all signs from beyond. As he puts it in Our Poet in His Time Past, I in my chair, top of this world, of this earth, right under hot sun, solar system prison, both whirl steady through the constellations. The poet's mind is the figure in the chair. The unpersonified forces are there as the sun and solar system. And the poem emerges as the earth itself, the poet whirling through space with this poem as a new creature, a pure environment. So the fact is that when you're reading József, you're learning about the composition, where these poems are coming from. So that's a great help when you try to track what's going on. So if you've got that triad, I think that you could find an analogy about what happens with a similar triad when translation takes place. The kind of poet's mind, which is this listening thing, that's there for me as the Hungarian original, complete world with its forces, mental events, source text. And the personified forces Graves talks about have their analogy with the English version that was provided by Aggie, as I say, with this full complement of notes, observations, careful annotation of form, associations, context. And the still formless poem is there as my will to draft and write a new creature into being, a poem that will work as a conceivable world in English. But as I say, the translation will only happen if the new triad comes together creatively, in the way that that collective that's holding the pen in József. The translation will only happen if this new triad comes together creatively with a generating energy, the Hungarian original always active as imaginative wellspring, Aggie's own poet's mind guiding the poem into true being, and the Englishing being as close to an active creation as possible. Take any element away and the translation fails, as it will if all the elements are not a combined compositional work. So there's a way in which the translation is being helped by the beautiful complexity and variousness of the original's contact with the world and with the mind. You're trying to mimic that and bring the English into a kind of a fellowship with the Hungarian through Attila József, the original, and as Aggie's Englishing. That's the way I worked. The other side, just sort of from a technical point of view, it's almost impossible to recreate the wonderful play of sound and rhythm and rhyming in the Hungarian. The rhyming in Hungarian is based on vowel play. And they have very many more vowels than in English, and they all have long and short versions. So everything is doubled up and extraordinary. So the only analogy I thought might work if I were to try to capture the vowel play was to use a para-rhyming, sort of not full rhyming, but using vowel shifts in order to loosen it. That means that there are a lot more rhymes available, so there's kind of a lot more variety comes into the English as a result. So it also avoids the kind of jog trot you get in full rhyming in English anyway. So that's just a few thoughts. Thanks for your attention.
Well, I'm not sure how one can follow that. I mean, you've heard a lot of the poetry. And you could hear the Hungarian as well. I don't know how many Hungarian speakers there are in the audience, but I'm sure there are. And I don't think you need me to tell you who Attila József was. People know that, and it becomes kind of quite clear. What Agi asked me to do was to say something personally, but also because I get kind of a bit bored of myself personally. I thought it'd be interesting to try and, if you like, pick up some of the themes that have been mentioned so far. As some of you will know, my family came here when I was 8, speaking Hungarian, and immediately switched to English. And I know Hungarian for 28 years. It's a long time. And Hungarian has slightly come back. When I try to think back of what Hungarian poetry my parents knew, frankly, I don't know. Petőfi, absolutely yes. And if there was somebody I say did know or could refer to or felt through them, it would have been Attila József, who I think is probably one of the most popular poets in the Hungarian language, and for good reasons. So I came to József a little bit late, and my natural instinct was to try and translate him. It's damn difficult. It's not just difficult on a technical level. I mean, to do all that rhyming stuff is very hard to do. But you could hear when Agi was reading just how integral that is. It just something comes pattering out at you quite very, very fast. I was also trying to think, well, is there an English literary model? It helps if you have some sort of English literary model when you're translating, because at least you have some kind of matrix against which you can play. And I can't really think. I mean, József was recognized very early on. Early on. He didn't have a long career. He dies at the age of 32. But people speak of him. Auden speaks of him. Other people speak of him. Partly that is political, I think, because in the 1930s, that was a politics that was very much in the air. And partly, well, how could they know? I mean, to translate into English from the Hungarian was not a common occupation. Very few people could do it. And there were waves that attempted at that. But there wasn't a solid body of work. So when I was trying to do it, what was wrong with what I was doing is I was doing it, trying to do it a little too stiffly. And what is the essence to me, as I hear it, of József, is intense colloquialism, very, very fresh language, plain language in many ways, a trust in his virtuosic imagination. He's a great virtuoso. When you go through the poems, he handles almost every difficulty. I mean, that cycle of sonnets, the Cosmos, I think he wrote it at 18. And that's what some people call a Hungarian sonnet, and some people call the crown of sonnets. That's 15 sonnets, in which the last line of the first sonnet becomes the first of the second, the last line of the second becomes the first of the third, so forth and so forth and so forth, until you get to the 15th, which is a sum of all those first lines, or last lines, I should say. So this is somebody who can kind of hold the language in the palm of his hand. Nor does he speak in cliché. I mean, you don't hear cliché in József, which is, I think, a kind of miracle. I mean, he's a man who is partly talking about his own experience. He is very much a first-person singular available in the poem. We are very much aware that this is a voice talking to us, and it's an identifiable voice. It is that voice. And it doesn't have to think about itself. If you write in English, it's quite rare to write well in the first person singular. because somehow we don't feel the authority, we don't feel the solidity, if you like, of that first person singular. How could I be talking about myself? Well, he does. He talks out of his own experience. It is autobiographical poetry. And a sort of politics. It's not ideology. It is not party politics. I mean, he was a Marxist, but he soon had problems with that. And in the 1930s, it was a natural thing to be. A lot of his contemporaries were. But you never feel that you're listening to a kind of political diatribe or a political speech. It's a person with living experience, and he comes at you with this extraordinary skill. I'll read you a tiny bit of this, and towards the end. The other thing which is always there, by the way, about which I do speak in this, is physicality. In József, that's what I mean, he's not ideological. He is physical. Everything is there. You can see it. You can touch it. You know you're in the presence of the elements of solid life, objective stuff, which is one of its ways of persuading us to listen. And it never becomes doggerel. For all that rhyming, precise rhyming, it could easily become doggerel, but it doesn't, because it has this extraordinary vigor. And it comes, that sort of vigor and that virtuosity comes to him as a very young man. I mean, if I could write anything like that at the age of 18, I mean, I'd have died by the age of 21 with a kind of self-satisfaction. But no, I mean, he's remarkable in that way. So a little bit from here, but slightly. The physicality is always there in his poetry, whether in grasping the political world through personal experience of it, in feeling and transmitting the intensity of loss and of desire, in grappling with memories of childhood deprivation or feelings of guilt and a rejection of the conformities demanded of him by his political affiliations. I then talk about various other poets he might be compared to. Sorry, Villon has already been mentioned. I think he's a great poet of the city. If you like, Beethoven is not a poet of the city, he's a poet of the land, I think. Whereas József is very much an urban poet. You're always being taken through streets and flats. So a bit of Baudelaire as well. Maybe Baudelaire's versions of the city. And when it comes to love, that slight air of surrealism, a touch of Gérard de Nerval, possibly. I mean, these are very tentative suggestions on my part. And of course, there's this element of folk ballad, which I think is plumbed into him from a very, very early age. Grace, and this is where I pick up the text, was the last term I used, and grace is probably the greatest of his gifts. Not gracefulness, as of prose, pose, or manner, but grace as in a blessing. Such certainty of touch, such tragedy and pathos without melodrama, such passion without attitudinizing or cant, such weight carried so lightly are all evidence of grace, a grace that runs through the later folk ballad-influenced quatrains, which he handles brilliantly. It is everywhere, a naked, exposed kind of grace, a grace of bare essentials. In this case, we are reading his poems in English translation, the latest of English translations. No translation is ever the one real thing, of course, nor is this, but is part of a real thing, a part. There are so many ways of hearing what is in fact there to be heard, each different. Translations of great poets accumulate Their greatness is partly in accumulation. József is a mountain from whichever point we look at him. Nor need we look at him in human terms simply as a victim of his circumstances, his temperament, or his frustrated ideas. His loves were intense and unsatisfied. His relationship with Marxism and psychoanalysis did not work out. These experiences were triggers for his poetry, but poems are not symptoms. The book is bilingual, the translations all new, take risks worth taking. It is a grand, exciting labor of love. József is often revered as a political hero, but he is not great by virtue of his politics. Politics are ennobled by such as József. I'll read you one of the poems, which I've got two poems here at the back. This takes a bit of nerve, so forgive me. This is a városperemény, but transferred to a modern banlieue. So what I've tried to do here is to try keep his form precisely, keep the poem the length that the original is, which is quite long. But I tried to capture, if there were somebody, a József, in such a place, which we kind of recognize, because I remember the riots in the banlieue of Paris, from that world, on the edge of town, on the edge of the city. So this is a verse, and it's one of those poems which titles itself after József Attila. It is not a translation. It is a kind of trying to keep parallel while running. We live on the edge of town, in a banlieue of the time, in a square of the imagination haunted by crime, and when we are dead and buried, we're buried in quicklime. We're scum in the eyes of the world, drunks, addicts, whores, and pimps, but for any dozen of us that sways, another dozen limps. We're not the housing the state invests in, but the dumps on which it skimps. Once inner city slums were home, and that was far from great, but it was clear we wouldn't last on prime site real estate. They threw us into this shanty town, sir, they could hardly wait. Don't come to us after dark, sir. Madam, avoid the street. There are some of us lurking here you wouldn't want to meet. And certain words in our loud mouths I don't care to repeat. My baby brother has big white eyes and he's a real sweet kid. But you wouldn't want to cross him now, knowing what he once did. You don't want to open those big white eyes to see under their lid. The lamppost, the broken window, the body that you pass, they're what you get from hanging around in showers of broken glass. Nor is the park all green and bright, nor is it all grass. The ceiling may have fallen in, the roof be gaping wide. Our doors may well be boarded up, but we are still inside. We burn old furniture for heat. We burn our hearts for pride. And there are those in government who need someone to blame. You raise the baton and you charge, you load your gun, take aim. But sinner and sinned against turn out sometimes to be the same. We're not much like you, I admit. We're foreigners at heart. We're not to be invited home. We must be kept apart. We're a disgrace. We stink and gob. We bellow, piss and fart. I'm not of your tribe, that is true. The bad guy never is. Every state must name and shame its own worst enemies. Whoever makes speeches in the house will know that I am his. I am a guest of your good grace. I owe the state its due. I freely admit that I'm a wreck and all you say is true. But night is no darker over me than it is over you. I know these streets the way I know the back of my grubby hand. I see the ambitions of the great and know the futures planned. I know what I stand to gain by it and how much I can stand. See, I'm in the role of it now. I started pretty raw, but sir, the verse I offer you is minted without flaw, nor do these perfect fingernails resemble a bloody claw. Myself, I'm not a slummer, I'm not your caricature, I'm not the sickness on the ward for which you find a cure. Am I the face in my own mirror, frankly? I'm not sure. The man who writes these lines for me thinks he's some kind of scribe. I wouldn't trust him, nor is he a member of my tribe. But I've no cash and can't afford a better class of bribe. He too is scared as shit, poor sod. I'm not sure he can hear as clearly as I'd like him to. I blame this filthy beer that makes my hand shake as I wish both him and you good cheer.
I think we have tried, both Adam and I, to give you a little sort of resume as to how the methodology works. But perhaps just one additional piece of information, which I think is really important, that once the sort of annotated, obsessive, compulsive version of mine was born, which then Adam sort of revivified into the English version, this wasn't over there. Because that's when the real work started. So we started sort of ping-ponging with the text until we felt that, okay, I think we can stop now. And I think the final sort of call was, you're asking about the little obstacles. There were interesting moments, for example, just to give you one, almost fatal error where Adam nearly killed Flora, for example, in one of the texts, and then we changed the kill to squeeze instead, and things like that. So there were things when we could have sort of produced fatal mistakes, but there was a constant sort of dialogue after the sort of major work until, and I'm going to finish here, until I actually felt that emotional reaction that I do still do after like being for 40 years an Attila József reader. So once I felt that emotional sort of trigger in me, that's when I thought, I think we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, the to and fro is really important because there's uncertainty when you have to distort what you feel is the kind of obvious straight translating surface in terms of the semantics and the sense. If you're trying to shadow the rhythm and get some of the kind of energy into the language. But one of the things I think with what George was saying about where do you find it in English, I don't think it's very difficult to find it in English unless you're going back to Skelton or something, or somewhere in the like the Louis MacNeice's or the Spanish Civil War poetry, something where you have some kind of attempt to engage with folk energies, but really what kept me afloat, as it were, in terms of the idea, was just trying to get a kind of plain style which was not close to the 30s, the strong plain style you see Auden experimenting with and the Auden crowd, but really much closer to the French idea of plain style. I mean, I think we used to talk about Villon. I'm also thinking about Apollinaire and Prévert, writers like that, sort of really trying like very fluent. So Villon being sort of play acted by Apollinaire. That's you're getting close, and you try. So you're translating from French, and of course he was he was greatly involved in French culture. That was his taproot. That was where he lived as well. So translation was for him a way of keeping his energies afloat, and he was just a great reader of French, wasn't he? Yeah.
I mean, when you're translating, you're not translating words. You are translating poems.
Yeah.
And you look to try and catch something vital in the poem, which is what gives you a certain degree of liberty.
Yes.
So, you know,
Yeah, and Villon especially, they use things like taking poetry that you can live with on the streets. That's the kind of thing that Villon gave him. So it's that kind of the street life, that street energy, but the boldness and the craft of it comes from this sort of this really living poetry as a medium of experiencing the world. So it is, and it's like incredible the scope, I think, isn't it?
This is a completely new piece of information I have got from Professor György Tverdota, which is a kind of in response to both what George and Adam are trying to explore here, which is, in a sense, literary influences. So there is a new article this Hungarian professor is working on. I hope I'm not sort of plagiarizing here by revealing the entire concept. But he's working on this idea that he thinks he's now able, somewhere in my introduction, I mentioned the sort of, and both Adam and I in our introductions mentioned the vast variety of forms, genres, styles he's tried within that relatively very short amount of time he had, the 32 years. So Tverdota is now working out, he's found out recently that apparently József had this incredible sense of visual memory. And whatever he read, he memorized it. I did not know this, but I find this piece of information incredible. So the work he writes is a sort of, don't get me wrong, but memory-tar. Do you see what I'm trying to get at? He was able to sort of photograph anything he read from all the writers you are actually talking about here. Anyway, just a little addition.
I make myself a world that's singular, private. A sea's just drops of water, tiny atoms, forever racked by desire and by dreams. Each human is a strange and lonely planet. No one can live a life carefree and quiet. Even the strong, like steamrollers turning with calm, flattening roads, rumbling on, never seem to cry out, "My back hurts." What shame is that? This bronze plaque signals our eternal order, so draws you to countless zones, to strange borders. A few of those who live there cry at death, and some who've thought it through are wandering mad. How blooms my soul that the winds of space erode, planet in orbit, rich in fecund earth. Planet in orbit, rich in fecund earth, ploughs through a million wild, dark agonies, soul's ploughshare cutting hard through all the woes, the iron blade cleaves deep through field and turf, sown into the steamy, warm furrows of the precious fields, the ears of corn. They nod towards the road where trees, tender and proud, trees of beauty, whisper through the groves. Beneath them, Cupid sits, a hungry lad, his dark eyes and his peasant's mouth drool blood. On sharp rocks, his murderous knives he lathes, pure feelings there too, wandering down the way. It's the first two sonnets. I'll read the 13th and the 14th sonnets, and then the master sonnet, which is made up of all the last lines of the previous 14. So this is moved into sonnet 13. Shine faith's beacon for cosmos, truth be told. For truth read life and the way that winds ahead. For cosmos endlessness, its cool wind that wounds when it blows. Such a gloomy cloud opens with dragon-like hellstorm, hissing hard from throat of magic steed, wild and unbound, panting, icy breath. It gnashes at the unkind, sly pilgrim's flesh with teeth bitter and mad. With its tight orbit, this minuscule planet is worth just as much as the eternal light in primordial soups, unmeasured, infinite. As for me, whoever's soon to peg it is my peer. But as I'm one of the elect, my glum planet shines gorgeous in the night. My glum planet shines gorgeous in the night. No other light peals forth so free and fine, more than the smell of roast pig and sweet wine. To the hungry prisoner in his cell shut, I clutch at desires after tough working days. Watch flames through my cell's bars come roaring in, hot into sad heart, so arctic alone. Round shines the sun on sad cell wall its rays. May Noah, Prince of Peace, sail to my heart. May a great cleansing flood thunder inside, though bitterness volcanic churns and spits, sows lava curses over all the fields. I am exquisitely right, a frightful man. I here create this world for me alone. Master Sonnet. I here create this world for me alone, planet in orbit, rich in fecund earth, wafting from trees of beauty, sweet scents breathe, my brain a roaring city of machines, prowling streets, drunk and merry in their bones, sweet garden tryst and all in kisses bathed, chafers hum for love in space's labyrinth, my dark credo, the holy river, runs. Tired mind, at end of day, planet revolving, cascades into the dark as it is cooling, like lines of poetry that you'll forget. If planets all grow desolate and cold, shine faith's beacon for cosmos, truth be told. My glum planet shines gorgeous in the night.